All right, everybody. It says I'm live. Now, I know a lot of you have been standing by, and I appreciate that. So, thanks for being here on another Monday night where we're going to discuss a lot of the things that are happening in the world right now and how you should expect more to occur. Now, if I sound good, if I look decent enough as a regular human being would, please let me know in the chat. It is much appreciated. And before we get into everything tonight, I do want to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. So a big thanks to them for always helping me do what I do here. And the fact that we have these conversations and they still support me should tell you a lot about their company and why they're awesome. So we've got Grisio Nemo, 4.8 by 4.9. You're really docking me pretty hard here lately on some of these ratings. So, but I appreciate the honesty. I've got Mikey G, Jet 308 by 308. Now that feels good, except for if you're on the other side of it, I guess. But this is going well. So, sounds like we're good to go. Sounds like everything is ready to rock. Now, the title of tonight's video is Prepare for More SHTF Destabilization Around the World. And there are events happening around the world right now that are in fact intertwined with everything else that's been going on. And they're in some distant places that a lot of us don't consider on a regular basis because most of the news and everything else related to the worldwide conflict that we're experiencing right now is only focused on certain regions. But these places are in fact connected to the entire picture, which is why we need to pay attention to them and understand just where we're at in the sense of a global conflict, not just what's happening in Europe and not just what might happen in the Pacific at some point in time. And in all honesty, just so everyone's aware right off the bat here tonight, we're not even going to discuss the Pacific portion of the global situation right now because there's enough going on in other places. So let's see here. Savage Lee says, I'm gorgeous, smooch, smooch. I appreciate that, Savage Lee. You know what? If it works for you, then I'm glad. Okay, so first and foremost, in case you were not aware, this was announced today, and it is relevant, and we're going to get into it. And bear with me, because if you're new here and you haven't seen this process before, we go through everything, and then by the end, you realize how all the dots are connected. And if you're here on the replay, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you as well. Make sure you comment below and just check in as part of the replay crew, because we appreciate you. France to withdraw ambassador and troops from Niger after coup, Macron. All right, so this is news from today, and we try to stay relevant within the past week to cover events that are occurring right now so you can be aware of what's going on. The new military rulers have been demanding the exit of the French ambassador and troops after President Macron refused to recognize the coup. Okay, so there's some really basic points here we need to touch base on, but there are some things that you'll see here in just a minute that show why some of this might be happening and why it's leading us towards a more dangerous path here in the future. France has decided to withdraw its ambassador. In the next hours, our ambassador and several diplomats will return to France, Macron said in a televised interview on Sunday. He added that military cooperation was over and that 1,500 French troops stationed in the country would withdraw in the months and weeks to come, with a full pullout by the end of the year. Which doesn't work, by the way. France's exit comes after weeks of pressure from the military and popular demonstrations. Thousands of people have protested in recent weeks in the capital, Niamey, including outside a military base housing French soldiers. Niger's new rulers, who had been demanding France's exit after Macron refused to recognize the July 26 coup, welcomed the French president's announcement. This Sunday, we celebrate a new step towards the sovereignty of Niger, they said in a statement read out on national television. This is a historic moment, which speaks to the determination and will of the Nigerian people, they added. The development comes as France's troops have also been asked to leave its former colonies, Mali and Burkina Faso, which we will discuss here shortly because it is relevant, I guarantee you. So, in case you weren't aware, there was a coup in Niger, which we went over in previous live streams, but now France is pulling out, leaving a already destabilized area, likely even less stabilized thereafter, and creating a power vacuum in the process. So this is the first step of some of these situations that are occurring right this second in the world that are escalating us towards more SHTF type scenarios. Let's see here. Real quick, I want to jump here in the chat. Mike H., thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I've also got Kevin Grip joining Magic memberships. So thank you for that. Just so you're all aware, I do not have the members only live stream tonight. Subscribe Star and channel member crew, I apologize, but I've got some things to get back to. Not everyone in the household right now is at 100% health. So as a father and a husband, I've got some things to do, and I apologize, and I hope you will forgive me. Now, let's see here. I saw some people say hello from Tampa Bay. We got Tampa Bay Prepper here, and you know what? That is very close to where I was born and raised. So I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Let's move on from this situation and talk about why this is actually relevant and a relatively important escalation in the sense of destabilization. The entire globe is experiencing a level of destabilization right now. And this is how this fifth generation warfare campaign is being waged. If you haven't figured it out yet, the powers that be are destabilizing as many parts of the world as possible in order to, I don't know, maybe rebuild it in whatever image they see fit, which is a problem for all of us because we aren't the people they're concerned about elevating to a level of comfort in the future. So let's go ahead and jump over here to kind of see how things have been going regarding France in Africa, because this is a big issue. And people might not pay attention to this as much as other parts of the world, but I guarantee you that we're going to see some things come out of these situations. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we are going to talk about those parts of the world as well a little bit later here because there's some relevant escalations happening there also. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso military leaders established security alliance. So this is important. They are establishing their own security alliance because there is a separate security alliance in that portion of Africa that was activated and ready to respond during Niger's coup. And this should show you just how all this is going. We have factions and alliances developing in that region where there's more than just these countries at play. And I will demonstrate that here for you very shortly. The military leaders of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger on Saturday signed a mutual defense pact. Ministerial delegations from the three Sahel countries announced in Mali's capital, Bamako. And understand this is from September 16th. Okay, so a week ago. The Liptako Gourma Charter establishes the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. Mali's junta leader, Assimi Goita, posted on X, the social net. What? Stop saying that. We know what it is now. It's enough. It's just X now, okay? Its aim is to establish an architecture of collective defense and mutual assistance for the benefit of our populations. The important part of that sentence is collective defense. We know about some other collective defense organizations in the world now, don't we? Okay, so we have these countries teaming up. Why is this relevant? Well, let's talk about it real quick. So this is Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Well, Niger just had their coup. France just exited. Do you think that there's any connection there with the other two countries related to what just happened in Niger? I would say probably. So, I don't know. How about Burkina Faso? Marks official end of French military operations on its soil, February 20th, 2023. France and Burkina Faso have officially marked the end of the French military operations in the West African nation. The Burkinabe Armed Forces said on Sunday after a flag-lowering ceremony at the French Special Forces camp a day earlier. Okay, so that's Burkina Faso. Well, what about Mali? Well, yeah, let's check in on that really quick too while we're at it, okay? Okay, Harvard International Review. This is from January 30th, 2023. All this year, after 9 years in Mali, France has officially left. Operation Barkhane, the French military counterterrorism campaign, which began in 2013, withdrew from its base in Mali this August. Since then, Operation Barkhane has almost universally been interpreted as a massive disaster on the part of the French. How France managed to fail Mali so miserably and whether the already precarious situation of the region will improve is still up for debate. So that happened in August of 2022, but this article is from January 30th, 2023. And it just goes into all of what's been happening there ever since. Earlier this year, French President Emmanuel Macron announced France's decision to leave Mali. All 2,400 French troops in Mali, out of the total 4,300 stationed in Sahel, would leave. The complete withdrawal finished 6 months later on August 15th, with the last French soldiers crossing into Niger. Who are not there anymore either, or will be exiting there shortly. So all three of the countries that now have a security alliance used to have French occupation. And France was basically bullied out of all three countries. And now those three countries are coming together. I'm hopefully building an outline as to what we should anticipate here in the future. And if you're with me on this. You're kind of on top of what's happening there. Let me know in the live chat. Just go ahead and say yes or something, just so I'm aware that we're all on the same page, because there's still more to this equation. So, what's with those countries? Why is this a big deal? Why does it have anything to do with what else is happening in the world right now? Aren't there some bigger issues regarding countries like Russia? Exactly. So let's talk about that too. This is from September 21st, 2023. Press release on Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Republic of Mali, Abdoulaye Diop. I think that's how you say it. I did my best. On September 21st, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had his conversation with Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Republic of Mali, Abdoulaye Diop, on the sidelines of the general debate held as part of the UN General Assembly's 78th session. The ministers discussed topical matters related to further strengthening the traditionally friendly relations between Russia and Mali, and also engaged in an interested exchange of views on the situation in the Sahara-Sahel region. Keep that in mind. Sahel is the important part here. Or is it Sahel? I'm not sure. Anyway, including the developments in the Republic of Niger. Oh, really? I wonder why they'd be concerned about that. Russia reaffirmed its commitment to continuing to contribute to stabilizing the situation in Mali, including within the United Nations. Also interesting that they want to stabilize a situation that France left after 9 years of occupation. Destabilization is the name of the game right now, and then restabilization is the way you get your hands on the leftover treasure, I guess. So, we're still going, I promise you. This is all interestingly connected. Where does it go from there? How is this an escalation? Why should I prepare for more SHTF type scenarios to come out around this whole destabilization campaign? Well, because all of these things are connected. Every single aspect of what's happening in our world right now is connected in one form or fashion. And this is why it's important to pay attention to these more obscure conflict zones that seem to be popping up all over the planet. Because as they pop up, the chances and the odds of something occurring on a devastating level increase, because other countries are involved with these countries. It's not just a localized situation. And that's what I'm trying to show everyone here tonight in this conversation, because that's where things can go south very quickly. So, remember those countries that built a security alliance that all used to be occupied by France and are now being discussed with countries like Russia in the possibility of working together in a traditionally friendly manner? Well, Mali won't stand idly by if ECOWAS intervenes in Niger. Okay? The foreign minister of Mali told the UN General Assembly that any military intervention in Niger would threaten Mali's security. The juntas in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, wait a second, what are those countries again? Signed a mutual defense pact last week. So wait a sec. I'm trying to figure, you mean all those countries are now in a mutual defense pact and they won't stand idly by if ECOWAS intervenes in Niger? But I thought ECOWAS was activated as soon as the coup was happening, and a lot of people expected there to be some sort of intervention. Interesting. Mali's top diplomat has warned that his country will not stand idly by if foreign powers intervene in neighboring Niger. Now, notice the change of nomenclature there. They didn't want to say ECOWAS. They said foreign powers, because it is in fact foreign powers. Mali remains strongly opposed to any military intervention by ECOWAS, Foreign Minister Abdoulaye Diop said on Saturday while representing Mali's military junta at the UN General Assembly. Any invasion of this country constitutes a direct threat to the peace and security of Mali, but also to the peace and security of the region, and will necessarily have serious consequences. The West African regional bloc ECOWAS has threatened to stage a military intervention in Niger after democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum was overthrown in a coup in July. We all know how democratically elected things work sometimes, don't we? Anyway, the country's new military ruler, General Abdurrahmana Tchiani, I'm doing what I can here, man, has proposed a 3-year transition back to democracy, which ECOWAS has rejected. Because why would they want that? They want their person in power. ECOWAS has repeatedly called for Bazoum to be released from house arrest and reinstated as the country's leader. It has sent multiple delegations to Niamey to find a diplomatic solution. Now, I just want you to picture something in your head. And this is all theoretical and hypothetical, of course. But if There was to be a coup of sorts here in the United States, and a previously elected leader was to be removed from office, and a new one was to be instated via coup. And then, I don't know, China or Russia was saying, hey, we want you to actually put the other guy back in. How would you feel about that? What would you consider regarding the fact that they're advocating for that person? And why should anyone within our country listen to any other country regarding our own domestic issues when it comes to how that all worked out? But that's what's happening there. So just be aware of that. Now, let's talk about ECOWAS for a second, because we already know there's a security alliance between the other three countries already mentioned. But what about this whole ECOWAS thing? Why do they have so much power? Who really are they? Well, I think that we can actually take a look here and say, oh, wait a second. Africa's NATO? Oh, what do you mean by that? How ECOWAS became a tool for Western imperialism. Now, this is a very biased article, but it gets the point across in a way that I thought was important for everyone to understand just how someone who might not be a fan of these organizations might view them, and how you should apply that to what's actually happening over there when it comes to the perspective of some of these other countries, right? Niger is shaping up to be, oh, by the way, this is from September 22nd. The last article was very recent as well. All these things are recent news. That's why we're discussing them, right? Niger is shaping up to be the surprising front line of the new Cold War. How is that possible? I thought Eastern Europe was the new Cold War. Yesterday, the 15-member Economic Community of Western African States, ECOWAS, ordered the activation and deployment of standby military forces to the country, right? An action that threatens to spark a major international war that can make Syria look minor by comparison. So this goes on to talk about how ECOWAS is part of a corrupt cabal, according to this writer. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that that's what the article is stating. And how they are, even before, I'll read this part to you. Even before the dust settled in Niger, ECOWAS sprung into action, imposing a no-fly zone and tough economic sanctions, including freezing Nigerian national assets and halting all financial sanctions. Nigeria suspended electricity to its northern neighbor. The regional bloc also immediately came to the defense of Bazoum, releasing an ominous statement declaring that it would take all necessary measures, including the use of force, to restore the constitutional order. ECOWAS also gave the new military government a deadline to stand down or face the consequences. That deadline has already passed, and ECOWAS troops are preparing for action. So, as of right now, there has not been an ECOWAS intervention, but that is the perspective of some of those who live in that region of ECOWAS, right? An arm of NATO in many ways. And in fact, they are heavily supported directly by the United States, which shouldn't surprise anyone at this point in time, because we basically support any organization of militaristic value that is willing to accept our support, because what does that do? It buys you influence, and it buys you leverage in order to have some say into what their actions should be based on their environment. And that's just how we do things, I guess, right? So that is what's happening in Africa. And I just hope everybody understands. The security alliance between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso is the alternative to ECOWAS. And that security alliance is aligned with countries like Russia. And ECOWAS is aligned with countries like the United States. Obviously, France was involved with this security alliance group of countries until basically this year, when they weren't anymore. So influence is changing, and alliances are forming, and conflict is being threatened on multiple levels, which means anything that happens over there bleeds over to everything else. It's all connected. So what else is happening? Because there's some other conflict zones that are popping up that have similar implications. And these things are being reported on, right? We're hearing about them. But the main focus, at least from my experience here in the preparedness community, is on two places mostly, right? We have Eastern Europe and we have the Pacific, which I understand completely, because the countries involved with those conflict zones are superpowers of a nuclear variety, right? Which all makes sense. But the thing that maybe we're missing from some of these conversations regarding these more obscure regions is that they are also the same superpowers, but just under different acronyms. Okay, so let's move on to what's happening right now in Nagorno-Karabakh, which, in case you don't know, is a region in Azerbaijan that is, I think, 90 some percent Armenian when it comes to the culture there, right? But it's having some issues because Azerbaijan and Armenia are not friends and things are not going well. And now that area is a hot conflict zone. Mass casualties feared in powerful explosion at Nagorno-Karabakh fuel depot. This is from today. A powerful explosion on September 25th is feared to have resulted in mass casualties at a fuel warehouse near the Stepankert Askaran Highway in the mostly ethnic Armenian breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh, where Azerbaijan is in the process of taking full control of after a lightning military offensive. Separatist authorities in the region said many burn victims have been taken to hospitals for treatment. Details remain scarce in the incident. Rescue teams are here at site, officials said. Okay, so this shows that this is active right this second and producing mass casualty events, which is not good, right? Obviously, the people who are affected by these types of events the most tend to be civilians. And so we're witnessing this happening in that region right now. Well, Magic Prepper, why is this relevant? Why is this applicable to what's happening in the world right now? How is this connected? Is this connected to the Africa stuff you were talking about? Might as well be. Let's move on into that and I'll show you. This is kind of my goal on these conversations we have. Let's not just report. I don't want to just regurgitate the news to you. I think that that's something that can be easily done. And in fact, I could probably start a channel right now where I have an AI just source all the news of the day and then read a script for me. And then all I do is put in random B-roll from like Adobe stock or whatever. And then that channel would probably do pretty well. I could probably just make that right now. But that's not as beneficial as creating a thought process around what's happening, not just reading the news, but seeing how it connects to other things that are occurring right now, seeing how the events that are occurring in the news currently can actually apply to other areas of the planet, and then applying that to our preparedness based on the threat escalation level that we're currently experiencing. To me, that's more beneficial than just saying, here's this news story. Now, here's another news story. That's what happened today. Have a good day, right? So I'm trying my best here, and I hope that it's resonating with you all. And if it is, let me know, because these are the things that I try to do. But if I'm maybe on the wrong track, it's good for you to let me know that as well. I appreciate feedback, even the negative stuff. And if you haven't noticed, I do get into it with the trolls from time to time because that's just how I am. So Armenia and Azerbaijan, what's going on there? What's the deal? Well, this is a big issue, okay? How Armenia and Azerbaijan's conflict could still destabilize the region. Now, this destabilization or restabilization, part of the conversation seems to be consistent. It continually comes up in these areas of conversation because that's the name of the game. Everything is destabilization. It's not about invasion or taking over a country. It's not about border wars or anything like that at this point in time any longer. With this fully connected international society, thanks to the internet, destabilization is basically what you get. You destabilize a region and then you re-stabilize it in a new fashion that works better for the interests who are invested in it, right? So, the latest struggle over Nagorno-Karabakh, a majority Armenian enclave in Azerbaijan, will ripple throughout the region. It's almost like it won't just stay where it is. A decades-long conflict in the Caucasus, reading isn't my thing, I guess, flared up last week as Azerbaijan launched an anti-terror strike aimed at Nagorno-Karabakh, the semi-autonomous majority Armenian region within its internationally recognized borders. And just in case you're not aware, because I don't know everyone's history background here, I don't know how much you know about foreign topics that aren't really 100% related to the United States, right? So I don't know what your education level is in regards to history. So if you don't know, I would highly suggest you research and look into things regarding Armenian genocide and just let me know what you learn so you can apply it to some of the things that are occurring right now. Anyway, now many of those ethnic Armenians are fleeing the territory. The breakaway region's leaders told Reuters that as many as 120,000 people Essentially, the entire population of Nagorno-Karabakh would leave out of fear of ethnic cleansing by Azerbaijan's government after the region's de facto government capitulated to Azerbaijan last week. They are afraid of literally being wiped off the face of the earth. So you're about to have 120,000 displaced people. Tell me whether or not that's going to create destabilization. Who knows, right? For the second time in 3 years, Azerbaijan's government made decisive gains in a conflict with Nagorno-Karabakh. This time, the anti-terror strike it carried out last week appears like it could dissolve the territory altogether. It's a result that could echo far beyond Azerbaijan's borders, as it has escalated an already difficult humanitarian crisis and is roiling Armenian politics. Okay, so this is a hot spot on the planet. It always has been, right? But it's getting worse. And it is involving all of the usual players, just like we just talked about in Africa. Well, what do you mean? Who's involved with this? Let's see. I'm just going to rip this right off of Wikipedia to make it nice and simple and make it nice and easy, okay? Foreign relations of Azerbaijan. The Republic of Azerbaijan is a member of the United Nations, the Non-Aligned Movement, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, NATO's Partnership for Peace, the Euro-Atlantic Partnership Council, the World Health Organization, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Council of Europe, CFE Treaty, the Community of Democracies, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. That's their foreign relations. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and do the same for Armenia. Armenia, what are your foreign relations? Since its independence, Armenia has maintained a policy of trying to have positive and friendly relations with Iran, Russia, and the West, including the United States and the European Union. It has a full membership status in a number of international organizations, such as the Council of Europe and the Eurasian Economic Union, and an observer status, etc., and some others. However, the dispute over the Armenian genocide of 1915 and the ongoing Nagorno-Karabakh conflict have created tense relations with two of its immediate neighbors, Azerbaijan and Turkey. Oh, and by the way, Turkey, if you're not aware, is a NATO country. So these countries are directly related to the other countries. Azerbaijan has friends in NATO, and Armenia has friends in Russia and Iran. So this is how it all works. It's all part of the same conglomerate when you want to talk about defensive organizations, or offensive, if you really want to be honest, right? All these things are connected, every single one of them. This destabilization is happening globally for the reasons that you would expect. And it has all the same people pulling the strings. We've seen what has happened to countries like Libya when the United States decided that their leadership no longer was doing its job, right? So destabilization is something that's easily accomplished, especially in countries that don't have the infrastructure or the defense funding that countries like the United States has. So don't be surprised to see more and more countries topple or be destabilized to the point of actual open conflict, hot kinetic action, right? Which is not a Cinemax channel, I promise. So let's get in the chat for a second. I just want to make sure that I'm still one of the people. Prepper now, Rip Curl Readiness. Thank you two very much for being here and modding. I always appreciate it. It always helps out with the chats. 601 Firepower. Do you believe civil unrest could be the outcome of next year's election? And are you really ready for something like that truly? Well, here's the thing. First off, I guarantee we're going to get some sort of unrest from it because next year's election is not going to be accepted by anybody. I don't care what side you're on. Do you think that if the Republicans win the election, that the Democrats will say, well, our elections are in fact extremely secure and full of integrity, so therefore this is just who won, and that's what we have to go with, right? I'm not seeing that happen, and I'm not seeing the other way around happen either. So you tell me what you think is going to happen. And then, are you ever truly ready for anything like that? That really depends on where you are and how close you are to the danger area, right? Where I am, it won't even be a thing. But if you live in an urban environment, it will likely be a thing. So just keep these things in mind. Let's see here. Neuromonic says property taxes are ridiculous. And I don't know what you're referring to, but in general, I just agree with you outright. We can all agree that property taxes are ridiculous and they should just not exist. Thanks very much, government, for that. Let's see, DM Magic. I used to have a failure of Armenians who live next door to me. I think that I think family was what you meant. So that was really hard to read, but I understand what you're saying now. So the woman told me we go all the way to Jesus Christ when he walked the earth. Interesting. Well, guess what? What they're dealing with over there right now is probably extremely scary, and I'm sure many Armenians here in the United States have family over there as well, right? There's everyone from everywhere, so it's expected. But yeah, a lot of interesting things happening over there. So here we are. Now, before we move forward, I do want to go ahead and also mention that if you are trying to stabilize your wealth in any way, shape, or form, and you're looking for a way to also support the channel in the meantime by acquiring gold and silver and supporting my necessity for lead and brass, then please make sure you check out Genesis Gold Group by going to magicpreppergold.com. And look, they're supporting the channel. They're helping me do what I do here, and they are some legit people over there that are pretty cool, and they're a faith-based company. So if that makes you feel better about working with them, excellent. But if you don't share the same faith, that doesn't matter either. And here's one thing about Genesis Gold Group you might not know about other gold groups. They aren't involved with the CCP. They don't work with China. Do other gold groups work with China? You'll have to look that up for yourself. But I guarantee you, you'll be interested to find what exactly you find. So Genesis Gold Group, big thanks to you all for helping me out with getting this channel moving forward, and for, helping anybody out here who wants to invest in precious metals. You can do their, roll over into a gold-backed IRA with your current retirement account and avoid any tax penalties and all that good stuff. So make sure you hit them up and let them know Magic Prepper sent you. I appreciate it. I just put the link in the chat, and I'll put it in the description as well as in the pinned comment. So, and look, I've said this many, many times, but I'm always looking for ways to kind of keep the channel moving forward, and I appreciate the support that I receive from these sponsorships, and I try my best to keep them relevant to preparedness, because if you guys would like me to actually be rich, then I can start doing Raid Shadow Legends ad reads all day long, and I guarantee you they pay way more than they should. So, but I won't do them because of the fact that it means nothing for your preparedness. So anyway, let's see here. Sorry, but that's just real life. Let's move on. What about the elephant in the room, which is Eastern Europe, right? Let's talk about it. The first U.S. Abrams tanks arrive in Ukraine. That was reported today. They are ahead of schedule, in fact. Now, obviously, we're loading them up with equipment. That's just part of the deal. I don't have an Abrams tank, but yeah, it is what it is. But what I will say is that every tier that we go up when it comes to the type and level of equipment we're sending over there, the possibility of escalating this conflict into something much more dangerous goes up along with it. It's just part of the equation. It's math, right? It's just simple math, a universal language, they say. So they got Abrams tanks now, and we're going to talk about tanks a couple of times because there's other interesting developments happening as well. The first U.S. Abrams tanks pledged to Ukraine have arrived in the country and are being prepared to send into battle, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced on Monday. Always great to announce these things on a world stage, I guess. Good news from Defense Minister Umerov. Abrams are already in Ukraine and preparing to reinforce our brigades. I am grateful to our allies for fulfilling the agreements, Zelensky wrote on X, formerly known as Twitter. Because we're all idiots and have no idea what's happening in the world, apparently. Zelensky added that Ukraine is looking for new contracts and expanding the geography of supply. Whatever that means, I guess, right? The Pentagon confirmed the tanks arrived in Ukraine, with a spokesperson saying the mere presence of Abrams tanks serves as a potent deterrent. We shall see, shall we not? By having these tanks in their arsenal, the Ukrainian army can more effectively discourage aggressive actions, a Defense Department spokesperson told The Hill. We will continue to focus on what we can do to help Ukraine succeed on the battlefield and protect its people. Abrams tanks are there. Russia knows the U.S. sent them. Russia knows the U.S. is training Ukraine on how to use them. Russia knows that this is just the U.S. So always keep that in mind as things escalate in that region. Now, here's an interesting little story. I have the Russian version of events, and then I have the German version of events, and we're going to talk about it because it's rather interesting. And Because of the US Abrams tanks being in Ukraine now, I have concerns about what that could lead to based on these stories. So let's talk about them very quickly. All right. September 23rd, 2023. Russia destroyed Leopard tank in Ukraine with fully German crew. Now, hold on. I know there's going to be naysayers in the chat. I told you I have both sides of the story because in order to analyze what could be happening there, we should probably read both sides, right? According to the head of Russian reconnaissance team, the German soldier named his brigade and alerted the Russian troops of their location before expressing regret that he agreed to fight in Ukraine and afterward died. That's a very morbid statement. According to a Russian reconnaissance team head, the team destroyed a German-supplied Leopard tank of the Ukrainian military with a crew made up of Bundeswehr troops in the Zaporizhia direction on Saturday. RA Novosti reported. All these words, I got to start learning more languages, I guess. I thought Spanish was enough, The team's head described how the team destroyed the Leopard tank and moved out to the burned vehicle, hoping to seize the tongue, when the driver mechanic appeared to be badly injured and the others were dead. The mechanic began screaming, "Niet schießen," do not shoot in German, according to the head of the team. While receiving medical help, the German named his brigade along with its dislocation site, and as he repeatedly claimed he was not a mercenary, but a Bundeswehr, am I saying that wrong? Probably, right? A Bundeswehr serviceman, and that he and the rest of the crew were members of the same unit of the German army. If that's true, that is extremely bad. You have NATO troops in Ukraine in a tank fighting with Russia and Germans in German tanks fighting with Russia, which I'm sure has some historical scar issues. But also, that means a direct attack on NATO forces. Okay. And a direct attack by NATO forces. I don't know. So let's go ahead and move into the other side of the story, right? We got to have both sides. We can't just believe whatever Russia says. Let's be honest. We know that's true. German Defense Ministry denies Russian fake news about German tank crews in Ukraine. Now, okay, hold on. We'll go through the story first, and then I'll give you my thoughts, because I have thoughts on this. Germany's Ministry of Defense has denied a false allegation being spread by Russian state media that a German Leopard tank with a crew from the Bundeswehr had been destroyed in the combat zone in Ukraine. Source, a representative of the German Defense Ministry in a telephone comment to DW as reported by European Pravda. There are no German tank crews in Ukraine, he said. Well, now I believe you. On 23rd September, Russian media began to spread allegations that reconnaissance officers from the Russian armed forces had destroyed a Leopard tank supplied to Ukraine with an all-German crew consisting of German armed forces. They referred to a certain commander of a reconnaissance group operating on the Zaporizhia front. On 30th of August, Latvia categorically denied a false Russian allegation that Latvia had been involved in a drone attack on Pskov Airport. I don't know if you pronounce the P. Possibly, it's silent. Prior to that, fake news was spread in Poland about an alleged fight between Poles and Ukrainians in which the Poles were forced to say "Glory to Ukraine." Polish law enforcement officers have denied this. Okay. So, that is their defense to this. Quote, there are no German tank crews in Ukraine. A representative of the German Defense Ministry in a telephone comment to DW, as reported by European Pravda. Okay. First off, this denial is much less convincing than what Russia's story is, because at least they have like a full story about some of the events. They give you a little bit of a timeline, right? This is just some guy saying, nah, didn't happen, right? I don't know who to believe. Don't get me wrong. I can't verify either one. But what I can say is that I do remember Romania specifically saying that a Russian drone didn't land or crash in Romania. And then I also remember Romania then later on saying actually a Russian drone did crash here. So although I don't trust Russia because they are like the inventors of propaganda. Well, there was that one other country. What country was that? I don't know. Anyway, Leopard tanks from Germany aren't in Ukraine being staffed by German soldiers. So who knows what to believe? But all I know is that you should question the official narrative. You should always read both sides of the story. This is a huge escalation if it's true. If it's not true, it's a strange attempt at morale boosting for Russia. And that's one of the things that you have to also consider. Who has the most to gain from this story and who has the most to lose? How much does Russia gain from this? Well, probably not a lot if it doesn't really change anything about the conflict, right? What else is going to? Oh, well, Germany's here now, so we're going to just strike Germany. That's not what's happening. So okay, how much does Germany have to gain from this story? Nothing at all. In fact, it's very bad for them. Okay, so on the other side of it, what does Russia have to lose? Well, they won. They beat the tank. So the only thing they really have to lose is their credibility if they lie about something that just never happened, right? Whereas Germany has a lot to lose because they're not supposed to have troops on the ground in Ukraine fighting Russia in their own equipment. These are the things you should be asking. In the fog of war, during these conversations that we're talking about this conflict, there is no more news, right? I made a whole video about that for a reason, because everything has a reason that it's being posted at this point in time, which is why you have to check more than one source, which is why you have to validate things through referencing. And then you also need to take multiple perspectives into the equation. And that's why I read CNN sometimes. That's why I read Fox News sometimes. That's why I go to these mainstream, super ideological media outlets just to see what the regular people are digesting, which then allows me to develop some better thought processes as to what they feel like is happening in the world, right? So I think we got that all figured out. Now, and look, I'm not trying to offend anybody if you read Fox News or CNN. That's not the point here. The goal there was to let you know that they are trying their best to disseminate information to the common denominator as best as possible, which means you don't always get the full story or all the details, and that's just how it is. So let me know in the chat. In fact, let's just do this real quick, because I like doing these little things here that the chat lets me do sometimes. Was a German tank, or a Tinak, if you can't spell, I guess, with a German crew in Ukraine destroyed by Russia? I want your votes. You guys let me know. Boom. Send it. Dave Sickles, good evening to you as well. Billy the Kid Norwood, I like you. Not in a gay way, but like in a military way. Wait a second. Is that a trick? I like you too. And honestly, I appreciate all of you, because honestly, coming here every Monday night and having these conversations and having all of you here supporting the channel at the same time as actually digesting this information and trying to be on the same page as, the community is very beneficial. So thank you so much for being here. All the support is appreciated. If you want to give me the thumbs up, or you want to subscribe or do all those YouTube things, it helps a lot. And if not, just you being here is totally enough. I 100% promise you that. Okay, so I hope you all know I also have a good time. Like, I'm actually enjoying myself when we're having these conversations. It is what it is, okay? So what else is happening over there? And the tank thing is strange, right? So I gave you both sides of the story. I tried my best. I wasn't trying to just be like, see what happened? No, we need to find, we need to look through the fog to find out if there's anything more to it. And I don't know if I'm super convinced by Germany's "there are no tank crews in Ukraine" statement, right? All right. Recently, as in 4 days ago, Russia started hitting some energy facilities big time in Ukraine. This is more escalation, but this actually segues us into what Ukraine did right after. But first, let's discuss this really quickly. All right. Russia pounded energy facilities across Ukraine on Thursday in its biggest missile attack for weeks, firing what Ukrainian officials saw as the first salvo in a new air campaign against a national power grid. Power cuts were reported in 5 Ukrainian regions in the west, center, and east, reviving memories of multiple airstrikes on critical infrastructure last winter that caused sweeping outages for millions during the bitter cold. So, a couple of takeaways here. First off, these strikes on the infrastructure in Ukraine are still happening. They're not going anywhere. Second off, the other thing to keep in mind is that if you are in a conflict zone, doesn't matter where you live, the UK, maybe you live in Germany, maybe you live in Japan, maybe you live here in the United States. If you're in a conflict zone, which no one is immune from, don't lie to yourself just because you're in the United States and you're very comfortable. No one is immune from being in a conflict zone all of a sudden. It's highly, 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 highly likely that the power grid and the infrastructure of your area will be attacked. So you should have plans to deal with no power during these types of scenarios, not just for winter storms, not just for hurricanes. Obviously, countries know that going for the power grid in many ways is like going for the throat. Why would you think you would do that? Let me tell you why. It's called destabilization. Have I said that enough times tonight? By destabilizing the region, you absorb tons of resources when it comes to the country that you're attacking. They have to send resources and rescue crews and emergency management and everything else out to these areas to try to get these people back online. Or if they wait too long and can't get things back on the grid soon enough, you end up having chaotic scenarios of unrest and just complete chaos. So this is going to happen in any future war. Be prepared for it. We already know that it can be accomplished without missiles as well. There's a lot of ways to do it that don't require actual conventional weapons. All right, so officials said at least 18 people were wounded in the airstrikes, including a 9-year-old girl, and a regional governor said 2 people were killed in a separate overnight Russian shelling. Winter is coming. Tonight, Russia renews missile attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, lawmaker Andriy Osachuk wrote on platform X. Hey, Reuters, good job. You didn't try to remind me of what X is anymore. I appreciate that. Grid operator Ukrenergo said it was the first Russian attack on power infrastructure in 6 months and had reported damage to facilities in western and central regions. Okay, this is war now. Don't kid yourself. Like the power is just going to be on if anybody's in a war zone, right? Moving on. After that, I think Ukraine was mad, which I think is totally reasonable because they were dealing with a missile strike, targeting their grid. So, Russia's Black Sea Fleet commander among 34 killed in a missile strike in Crimea. Yeah, that happened. The missile strike that blasted the Crimean headquarters of Russia's Navy last week killed 34 officers, including the fleet commander. Ukraine said Monday, though it provided no evidence to support its claim. Once again, we're in the fog of war. You can't necessarily believe every single thing that's put out there, but this is circulating around as being legitimate, and that's a pretty extreme accomplishment for the Ukrainians, in all honesty, right? I mean, this is big. Ukraine's Special Operation Forces said on the Telegram messaging app that its strike on the main building of the Black Sea Fleet headquarters in the port city of Sevastopol had wounded 105 people. The claims could not independently be verified and are vastly different from what Russia has reported, of course. Now, one thing I'll say to you all, just so you're kind of aware of how things work here, I would like to show referencing of more of the Russian media just to kind of get that secondary perspective, but unfortunately, I am limited in what I can do here because of just things, okay? And I think by saying that, everyone knows exactly what I'm referring to, and here we are. Now, Russia's military announced the attack on the building and initially said 1 serviceman was killed, but later said the person was not killed but missing. Moscow has provided no further updates. That's a pretty substantial difference. This was a big attack. Either way, this is an escalation. And this quid pro quo type scenario or tit for tat situation that we're witnessing right now, it doesn't get better, right? It just continually escalates until something really, really bad happens. Okay. Now, we've been funding this whole thing for quite a while, okay? Let's see. Nick, I see your question or your statement there. There's a lot of subjects within that make things difficult for me to address right now. But what I can say is that do your research and don't just believe everything you read, but understand that there are a lot of things that the average person is not aware of regarding issues in that region. Law of the minimum. Oh, wait. Seiko Mag. MP, you telling you didn't get a free Abrams as well? No, I didn't. I did not get a free Abrams tank. And I am upset about it, I'll talk to Midway about it and see if they got any in like inventory or not. But as of right now, I'm pretty sure that's not on the table. So Law of the minimum. MP of the best content. I think you'll enjoy a song called What About Us by Samson. I think it's more powerful than Men North of Richmond. Okay, well, maybe I'll check that out. Thanks for the suggestion. And I appreciate the kind words. I really do. Dewey Dude says, order a case of 77 grain and call it a day. I like that. I like that. Okay. All right. And Nick, yes, you can find a lot of information from years ago. And if anyone wants to consider some of that topic, just, I don't know, see what Canada just recently did in the sense of promoting somebody who has some of those ties. Moving on, we are going to continually aid Ukraine even if our government shuts down. Here's what I want you to know about that. Look, I am not the person here to say we have to do this or we don't have to do that, right? I understand nuance. There's quite a bit of it in the world. And I don't try to pretend I know every single aspect of every single thing in order to make the best decision for an entire country and all of its foreign affairs. But what I can say is that if the government shuts down, our soldiers will likely not get a paycheck, but we will still, according to what has been circulating recently here since today, we will still fund Ukraine. So I don't know how that works, and I don't like it. There is no reason that a U.S. service member should not get a paycheck because our government can't get it together when it comes to just agreeing that we should stop spending money we don't have. But Ukraine will continually gain funding during that time. I don't agree with that. Don't care. It's just how I feel. The odds of a shutdown increase the longer Congress goes without reaching a spending agreement. With cuts looming, people ask if Ukraine aid would halt too. Speaker Kevin McCarthy sent members of Congress home for the weekend on Thursday, increasing the odds that the government would shut down on October 1st because of a lack of spending agreement. This would not be the first government shutdown, so people understand that essential services would continue while hundreds of thousands of workers would be furloughed. Many government functions would cease. One thing that's different from 2019 is the United States military assistance to Ukraine. Lots of conservatives either disagree with sending more resources to Ukraine or question the way in which the Biden administration has done so, leading many people to ask whether such assistance could continue during a shutdown. Question: would U.S. military aid to Ukraine continue during a government shutdown? Answer: true. Yes. American assistance to Ukraine is among the military programs exempt from the impact of a government shutdown. What we found: the U.S. State Department reported in January that the U.S. spent more than $113 billion during 2022 in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. President Joe Biden has asked Congress to authorize $24 billion more to help Ukraine continue to defend itself. Chris Sherwood, a Defense Department spokesperson, tells us current operations will continue. Operation Atlantic Resolve is an accepted activity under a government lapse in appropriations, which is consistent with the DoD's contingency plan guidance for continuation of essential operations in the absence of available appropriations. Every federal agency has a contingency plan that explains which functions would continue during a government shutdown and which would be suspended. Aid to Ukraine is part of Operation Atlantic Resolve, which is primarily in support of NATO. As an exempted military operation, there would be no interruption for any training we provide or equipment we send to Ukraine. All right. So there you have it. We can shut down our government, but we can't stop funding Ukraine. Here's the thing. I'm not against Ukraine per se. Right? That's not how I roll. I'm not a fan of this conflict in general. I'd like it to be over. But I don't like that we're going to keep funding Ukraine when we can't even fund ourselves. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Reasonable? I don't know. I guess maybe not to a politician. All right. Well, speaking of our government doing stupid things, let's talk about something else that you should be aware of. Okay? This is important. President Joe Biden to establish first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention to be overseen by Vice President Kamala Harris. Listen, this is where things are going. They are still going to try to disarm you. They don't like us being able to protect ourselves, and they don't like the idea of us being able to possibly say no, right? This is unnecessary, completely unnecessary. It's a scare tactic, and it's a trap, because whoever gets elected next will either maintain it, which will be bad, or they'll dismantle it, and then all the usual talking points will come around to explain to the American people that, that would have actually saved a lot of lives, but that president, they had to get rid of it, right? So this is just trash, bureaucratic trash. And it's setting up the template for disarmament. It just is. I don't know what else to tell you. And I can explain that for you a little bit further here if you'd like. But this is not okay. The White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. It's a sham. I don't care. It is what it is, and that's what I'm calling it. And we all know it's true. And just so you're aware, if here's my prediction: if we get another 4 years of the same regime, they will come after our guns very, very hard. That's my speculation because they'll feel like they have the opportunity and they aren't going to be running for reelection and they'll they'll take the opportunity. I guarantee you, which could mean a lot of very bad things. Though here's where they're really going to try to convince the general population as to why this is so important. Okay, you hear this talking point all the time. Gun violence remains the number one cause of death for children, ages 1 to 19, at a rate of almost 5 in every 100,000. Black children are 6 times more likely to die from gun violence than their peers. All right, where this is so inaccurate, well, first off, we all know how stats work, right? But where this is so inaccurate is that it's not gun violence, right? It's a lot of things compiled into one awful situation. It's awful policies. It's unsafe environments. It's negligent parenting. It's defunding police in the sense of not having enough of them to respond and not having enough of them to protect those who we assume to want to protect the most, aka children. It's lack of funding for any protection programs for children. Like there's so many things that go into this, but they're going to sell it to the population as this is the stat and this is why it's so important. That's why we have to change things, right? And the children are always how they get this stuff through. Always. It will always be the children. It's always been the children. It'll never not be the children. They will leverage the children against you in order to maintain more control. Just how it works every single time. And they're setting up all of the proper stepping stones right now so that when they move in to full disarmament phase, they have the minds and hearts of the general population, right? We know there's 40 million gun owners in the United States, okay? Well, there's still 340 million people, which means there's 300 million people who don't own a gun still. We're on our way to that. That's just my opinion. These people are insane. They're willing to do it. I 100% I believe that. So that was a little segue into something that I'm upset about that I needed to discuss tonight because honestly, it's still all connected. Let's be honest. If you're destabilizing Africa and you're destabilizing the Middle East, right, or Eastern Asia, however you want to refer to it, and if you're destabilizing the United States of America, one thing you definitely don't want to worry about is a highly armed and well-trained population because that just creates a lot of issues, right? And in all honesty, and this sounds crazy, right? But I mean, especially now, you can look at like the Taliban, right? Highly trained might not apply, but pretty well-armed group of people who are willing to do the thing. At least they were willing to get out and fight, right? I mean, now they're back in power. Took a long time. But they weren't ever defeated because here they are, right? And you could see why had the powers that be had the ability to completely disarm Afghanistan before they invaded and before they established their operating bases and control measures over the population there. Had they been able to disarm everyone, everything would have been a lot easier to accomplish, right? There would have been no Taliban, so there would have been no resistance, which means everything would have been much easier to deal with. I don't like using the Taliban for an example for anything, but that's just the truth, right? So, hey, law of the minimum. I appreciate you. I really do. Let's see here. We've got Bob from accounting. The government will never shut down. I mean, they did shut down before, Bob. I mean, yeah, it was okay. It was only for a week, but it's still a government shutdown. All I'm saying is that we shouldn't have a government shutdown and then also still be funding foreign wars, right? That doesn't make any sense. Yardbird says another distraction. Yeah, there's plenty of those lately. Brian Hunley, no step on snake. I'm trying my best, you know. And let's see here. Survival Living. Good to see you, brother. Great points, brother. Well, I appreciate that. I really do. It's Survival Living, good friend of the channel. He's been here since the beginning. So make sure you check out his channel, especially if you're interested in like bushcraft, because that's not my area of expertise, but he does a lot of it. So you can definitely learn a lot of good stuff over at Survival Living's channel, which I think is a good idea to go check out, especially if you like some craft humor from time to time, because let's be honest, we get some of that over there. But I like that, trust me. So, and I'll put that in the chat right now in case anybody wants to say what's up over there. To good old CFP. If you don't know Survival Living as CFP, then welcome to the party. You're new here, and we still like you. Don't worry. All right. I don't like a lot of the stuff that's happening. Prepper now says the firearm stats BS. Of course it is. 100% it is. But if you really want to understand why any form of violence is happening to children across this country right now, it's all the things I just talked about. There's so many reasons why nothing is in place for us anymore. Like there's no concern for the average person any longer, right? The good police who are left over are doing the best they can with limited resources and underqualified recruits, in all honesty, because they're desperate to get more people and they had to lower their standards because of all the mandates and restrictions that were placed upon them, as well as their funding levels, of course. So that means having to maybe offer lesser pay and everything else. And so they're doing the best they can. But in some places, like we're seeing, especially in their major metropolitan areas, we're getting more and more police who are bad at their job because they're underqualified. They're not the cream of the crop. And many of them are there for a paycheck instead of a calling, which is a vast difference when it comes to that purpose, right? So it's unfortunate. I'm not a big fan of the way things are going. Did the conversation tonight give you a better insight into why you should prepare for more SHTF destabilization around the world, right? That's the title of the chat. So hopefully that's what our conversation did, because we can talk about Russia, Ukraine all day long, right? We can talk about China and Taiwan. We can talk about North Korea. But a lot of people aren't talking about Azerbaijan and Armenia, right? A lot of people aren't talking about Niger. But these places actually have major implications if things get worse there. And all the same players are involved. Even China, which we didn't talk about tonight. But you better believe that China is in those West African nations also. So, keep prepping. Do what you can. And listen, the big thing I want everyone to kind of take away from this conversation when it comes to your preparedness is that you'll never be fully prepared. You'll never have every single thing you want. You'll never have all the skills you wish you would have had. So the biggest thing you should remind yourself of, because I need this constantly, is that when this all happens, if it all happens, which is becoming more likely as time goes on, but hopefully it still doesn't. But if this all happens, you will adapt to your new environment. That is a huge part of preparedness. It's not always about having every answer and every solution. You need to have adaptability, which also means you need to remove roadblocks from your life when it comes to being stubborn about things that might not work the way you want them to in an SHTF environment. A lot of people are very much that way. Well, I'll just, stay home no matter what happens. I guarantee you, when your house is on fire, you will try to not be burned by that fire, and you will avoid it, which means you may have to leave your house. These are just common sense concepts that people don't want to admit exist because it makes them uncomfortable. So be prepared to be adaptable. Be willing to change your mind or change your course of actions based on what's being presented to you. I'll never have enough food to just live off food forever without sourcing more. I'll never have enough water without having to have spare parts for my well or getting it from another source. Like, I can't just assume that I'll be fine into infinity by just buying more food, right? So I have to be ready to adapt. I have to be ready to possibly barter. People will say, don't barter, it's dangerous. You know what's worse than not bartering? Starving to death. You will adapt. You will have standards of operation. You will say, hey, I'm willing to barter in this fashion and with this level of risk, or I will not based on the threat environment, right? Everything has to be pliable. You cannot be rigid in your preparedness. You have to be willing to change based on what you're presented with. And that's just really important for us here in this community because I do hear it all the time. And I'm guilty of this sometimes as well, of being like, this is what I'm going to do. And this is not going to work because of X, Y, and Z. But you know what happens sometimes? W shows up and screws up your entire plan. And now you're running out the door with your pajamas on, right? With maybe like a keychain flashlight. And suddenly you're like, well, now I got to live, I guess. And that's something that you should anticipate happening. Nothing works the way you want it to. And what is it? Look, I'm not prior military, so I'm going to butcher this, I know. But that saying of every well-made plan fails at first contact or something along those lines, right? Nothing goes the way you want it to. It goes the way that it does. So be ready to go with it. Okay? And also, it makes your life a little less stressful. Knowing that you're just going to adapt kind of makes things a little bit easier, right? Like, I'm not stressing out like, I just need 3 months more worth of food and then I'll be fine, right? Why? Don't freak out about it. Have a plan. Hey, I'm going to try to get 3 months more worth of food. But in the meantime, understand that, well, if SHTF is today, I don't have that food, but I'm going to figure out a way to keep eating. Do what you can, but don't stress yourself about things that are out of your control. Be ready to adapt to that environment and you'll be fine. Or at least potentially fine. I'm not going to lie to you either. I can't just tell you you'll be fine. You never know. So I had House of Lamar says I have to be a Fed. You know what? If I had a federal pension waiting for me at the end of whatever strange career path I'm currently on and access to whatever type of weaponry I wanted, hey, that sounds like a pretty good deal. But you know what? I don't have those things. So feel free to believe I'm a Fed, but I guarantee you I'm not. Doesn't matter what I say though, right? But hey, if I am one, hopefully I'm doing a pretty good job of just telling you good information, I guess. What do you want from me, man? Anyway, yeah, I know you're kidding, House of Lamar. You're always here. You're good stuff. I like you. Listen, anything else anybody needs from me, magicprepper.com. Always a good place to go. Big thanks to Midway USA and Genesis Gold Group. I'm doing the best I can with keeping this channel moving forward. You guys all know that. Subscribe Star if you want to be part of that membership. Excellent place to go. We have a good little community over there. I do a preparedness incentive every month. And we do our members only live stream most of the time, just not tonight. Everything else about you all is amazing. I hope to see you on the other side of SHTF because I expect every single one of us to survive. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.